partially funded through a state grant and through.
Because I know we gave them, I
Was it
think it
even a
was
Natrona
it
County fund?
68,000 the first time, and then,
Wyoming Business Council, is that correct?
Business council.
It was, Judy, that was funded through a Wyoming Business Council grant, and I can get you the exact dollar.
I would
amount
appreciate
of
that. And then what do we pay them this time?
For. There was only one contract.
Okay, because the first one was 68,000 that I knew of. And then they went in front of the commissioners, what was it, last spring? For another, God, I want to say 98,000. I'd like to see a total amount of what we paid these guys for this design. Is
We've
basically,
only had one contract for our development plan with KLJ. It estimated about 45,000,
okay,
but I can get you that total.
Yeah, I
That's
would
the
appreciate
contract
that,
this
Trish.
department's had.
okay. Linda had a question?
I am concerned that as this land use grows and you're mentioning the contractors come to you, the realtors, the developers come to you. My concern is the federal funding that comes along with that. That needs, well, an example is the area that just got moved into the city of Mills. The federal
Robertson Road.
grant funding on that allowed for county land to be developed, and then within 3 years, then the city of Mills, in that specific example, is able to grow.
Annex it in.
Right, annex it in. And so that's a concern for me, because I like living in the county. I like less restrictions on my property rights. We maintain our own roads and we do a wonderful job of it. You know, I don't want that federal money to affect my land use. So what's the protection of the landowner to stay ahead of that?
I'm not aware of that.
I think she's talking about Robertson Road when, what is that, Tyler's development? That is right there, just off of Poison Spider.
The county's point of view in this land use plan, I mean, we can sure use that one as a wonderful example. The first phase was done before I came on to the county, but the second phase, I was here. So that was a prime example of a zone change. This would be another good example.
Which property you're talking about?
Okay, so we are talking about the property that is roughly at the corner of Robertson Road and Poison Spider. There's a housing subdivision that has occurred there on the east side of Robertson Road.
Correct.
Correct.
So some of that property in there was zoned urban agricultural.
Mm-hmm.
The land use plan spoke of that should be developed as industrial and commercial properties. They were seeing the town of Mills growing. We
Traded
adapted
land.
and said this land use plan 1998, the obvious growth is residential in that area. We believe residential is compatible in that area, and so the land use plan would guide us to the residential side. So we would go from a zone change from urban ag to residential, and we were guided in that direction because they would say we can provide, that has city water and sewer, so it's got public utilities to that property, so we can go to the higher density properties in there. So then after the zone change was approved, then we approved the subdivision where we divided the lots up, and then they were sold. Back to your question, Linda, I'm not aware of Keith Tyler receiving federal funds, and you'd have to ask Keith Tyler if he did. If we were not a party to any of those development funds. That's a private developer comes to Natrona County and says, I want to do a zone change and a subdivision in this location. Would you support it or not? And we go through the public hearings, notify folks, look at our development plan and our zoning document, and work through the process.
Well, an example of that is I go to city council meetings as well. The city council is quite aware of that federal grant money, and I would think the commissioners would be aware of it as well. because it's almost probably a pass-through grant, because it would have to be
Okay, by both.
given approval to pass through. But that was part of the ability for them to get federal funding, was that the land is to be annexed then into the closest city because they took the federal grant money. Now, my concern about that would be something that the property owner would probably have to be aware of it. My concern about that is the new federal grant money has something about effectually furthering fair housing, where the adjoining land subdivisions are automatically required to comply with the regulations of the new federal housing grants. So,
I'm totally speculating here. You may be thinking along the lines of lending and some federal incentives that may be out there for a Natrona County resident or any United States resident that wants to apply for a home loan. There may be some advantages there, but Natrona County is not receiving any federal dollars for any subdivision that occurs